The Indian Navy once again has come to the rescue, responding to a pirate attack on an Iranian vessel in the Arabian Sea. The Iranian fishing vessel Kambar 786 was hijacked in the evening on the 28th of March. Two Indian naval ships that had been deployed in the Arabian Sea for maritime security operations were diverted to intercept this hijacked vessel. After over 12 hours of intense coercive tactic measures as per the SOPs, the pirates on board the hijacked vessel were forced to surrender, culminating with the rescue of 23 Pakistani nationals. This is not the first time the Indian Navy has shown its commitment towards peace and stability in the waters. Remember, viewers, on the 18th of March, the Indian Navy warship INS Kolkata successfully cornered and coerced all 35 Somali pirates on board hijacked merchant vessel MV Ruen, safely evacuating 17 crew members amongst other efforts. Well, this brings us to a very important point as well as a question in there. Has India's role as the net security provider and guarantor in the ocean evolved, and has it overtaken that of some of its predecessors, more importantly the Chinese and the Americans? We'll talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the show is Wing Commander Praful Bakshi, Captain Sanjay Karve. Indian Navy is with us on the program as well. Major General G.G. Dwivedi, Global Strategic Defence Expert, joins us on the program as well. And last but by no means the least, Major General Dhruv Katoch, Defence Expert, joins us on the broadcast. He's also the Director of the India Foundation. General Katoch, I'll begin with you. Well, the question lies in the monologue that I just read out for you as well as our viewers. Has India become the new guarantor, the new custodian, or the guardian, if we can call it, of the oceans, considering the the frequency with which we have been attending to these SOS calls?
Thank you, Vineet. Yes, I think we can very safely say that, especially as far as the Indian Ocean region is concerned, both the Western Ocean and the Eastern Ocean. Now, the Prime Minister has continuously made this statement, that we are the net security guarantors in the region. And the specific reference at that point of time was to ensure the safety of all crew or the free and safe movement on the Indian Ocean. Now, I think that has been done extremely well by the Indian Navy repeatedly. It is not simply a one-off action or something. A number of rescue actions have taken place by the Indian Navy. The last one in which I think about 35 Somali pirates were arrested, and they are now currently facing trial in India. And in this particular case, there are 12 Somali pirates who have surrendered. So the role as far as the Indian Navy is playing in the Indian Ocean, I think is absolutely tremendous. To all intents and purposes, it is the Blue Water Navy. As of now, there are 21 ships deployed in this area, 21 warships deployed in the area with continuous surveillance. And any ship in trouble, the Indian Navy is in a position actually to carry out that rescue. You also made a mention of overtaking China. I don't think China was ever part of being in the position of providing net security to the people in the IOR. That job remains for the Indian Navy. There are no other navies which has the capacity or the will to do it, except for the US Navy in this area. But the US Navy, I presume, is involved much more deeply in the Red Sea. And so it has left the waters of the Indian Ocean, especially because of India's geographical location. I think that is left to the Indian Navy, and the job is being conducted brilliantly well. Vineet.
All right. General Dwivedi, how do you see this changing paradigm, if we can call it that, India's role in these waters, and the astute presence of mind that India has also been executing without sacrificing any lives, and also making sure that all lives are saved?
Well, Vineet, at the outset, I think Indian Navy deserves to be complimented for the back-to-back two operations which they have done very recently. It speaks volumes of their credibility, of their professionalism, and more importantly, their commitment. So, someone who follows the Indo-Pacific, Indian Ocean very closely as a student of geopolitics, I have always had this opinion and also advocated it, that India's geopolitical and geostrategic location India was just trying to play a very prominent role in the Indian Ocean region, and today we are being looked at to play a larger role in Indo-Pacific. And there are a couple of reasons for this. First and foremost, we are so well placed in the Indian Ocean geographically. We are dominating the sea lanes of communication, and we have the outreach. And secondly, Indian Navy is the largest navy in this region with about 150 ships. I think we are quite well placed to play an important role, as you rightly brought out, as a security guarantor and also as a security provider. But there are three issues which needs, I think, attention. You mentioned about China. China today, if we take the numbers per se, has the largest navy in the world, about 350 ships. And they plan to graduate to something like 450 ships in the next decade. The way they are going about and making bases in the Indian Ocean, right from Djibouti, now they are right into Maldives, they have a base in Kampuchea and in Cambodia, in Myanmar. Therefore, I think if you see the largest canvas, Chinese Navy will be willy-nilly in Indian Ocean very active because they have a deep interest. 70% of the oil is flowing from this region. 5 trillion trade of China is passing through this region. So Chinese will be quite active in this area in times to come. But two issues that I want to flag out. First and foremost, Indian Navy is also expanding. We are also looking at being a 3 carrier group Navy and also adding another 30 ships in next 5 to 7 years. Secondly, as we are well placed in port, we are looking for a larger role, and also lately we are also part of the India, West Asia, Europe economic corridor. So I think India is destined to play a role for which it is quite geared up. Our leadership is looking at this role, and more importantly, Indian Ocean region is going to be highly contested water board, and therefore I think we need to be well prepared, and there will be more turbulence and more insecurity issues that will come up, and I think in time to come, Indian Ocean region and Indian Navy will have a great role to play in times to come.
Absolutely. Commander Bakshi, why do you think it's imperative for India to take up this role? Why do you think by default this is India's responsibility? Why do you think this also, in fact, goes hand in hand with India's aspirations of being a Vishwaguru?
Thank you, Vineet. I fully agree when what General Dwivedi has brought out the point that our location is such. We are so well placed as far as jutting out into the Indian Ocean like an aircraft carrier that we are destined to play this role because first thing, maximum trade passes through, as has been mentioned, and even our trade, whether we are going to Persian Gulf or coming down from to Malacca Strait towards Indonesia, all the way there, our maximum amount of trade goes into east and west. So our shipping has to be protected. India is destined, India's Navy's job is to look after the commercial interests now that we are becoming the Blue Water Navy. And we are becoming with our changes in doctrines and thinking. Previously, probably we couldn't have thought about all this. And India will do it because our progress, our process and thinking is on the spirit of G20. We take everybody together and come up. Even in 1947, when we brought the group of Asian nations and African nations for co-prosperity and co-development. And this activity of Somalian pirates is totally against it. Well, I can't say that about China. Well, China would have taken this humanitarian task, and then Indian Navy is very well trained as far as practicing the UN clause, practicing the humanitarian aspect, short of war, before going to war. In fact, these classes are taken for the Indian Navy and the Coast Guard regularly. I have the opportunity of conducting that training, and I know very well that what measures they take before boarding the ship, before attacking the ship, and how to capture the culprits. All this aspect, Indian Navy does it in a very, very precision form, and that is why. And then the trade, the development, everything of the local countries is also depending on India. In fact, the idea of Asia, the Pacific strategic zone, which is coming up, clearly requires that this process of thinking should not be within India, but all the countries which are, there's a group of Indian Ocean regions, all the 17 countries, which probably are against China at the moment. In fact, China is already capturing the ships, their sea lanes, their fishing areas. So the role of Indian Navy and India as a nation is totally defined as taking everybody together as a Vasudev Kutumbakam spirit demands, and that is why you see how we do it. Where we, of course, I will not go through the actions of what the captain of the two ships must have conducted, beautifully coordinated with the Orions, the P-8 maritime aircraft, the drones, everything was in order, and that is what they are practicing now. So I personally feel Indian Navy and Indian nation, India as a nation, is gaining a lot of expertise, not only in this, but gathering a lot of appreciations also from all the countries, Bulgaria or any country, in the recent times, and now the Pakistan. Let us see what is the reaction of Pakistan when they'll hear that 24 of their sailors have been rescued by India. I personally feel this is a feather in the cap of Navy, and it goes very well to prove the present political stand, the doctrinal stand of India as a nation.
Absolutely. And Captain Karve, these are precarious and treacherous times as well when it comes to these attacks. The Houthis, of course, are extremely active in some of these seas. What kind of a risk assessment do you think India goes in with when they actually rescue these people from these operations?
Vinay, thank you very much for a very interesting question. If you look in the broader perspective, the Indian Navy always had the capability to reach far, but the intent was never seen. It is only now, in the past couple of years, that the intent of the Navy is seen, where an offshore patrol vessel is actually patrolling ocean 2,500 kilometers away from the Indian coastline. What the Indian Navy is doing is safeguarding the merchant shipping lanes, which is one of the primary tasks given to the Indian Navy. The reason being, 80% of our trade to Europe and East USA passes through the Red Sea. We have a trade totaling $110 billion, which goes through the Red Sea. Because of this things which is happening in Red Sea, thanks to the Houthis and the Somalian pirates, the insurance rates of shipping have gone up. The container charges have gone up. This is all adversely affecting the shipping and economy of our country. Now, coming to a question of the Houthi, it is a cause for concern. Today, Houthis are acting independently. The Somalian pirates are acting independently. What the Indian Navy is doing, as I understand, is effectively utilizing its long-range maritime aircraft, that is the P-8Is, which are operating from the East Coast and West Coast, from Goa and other places, and keeping an eye from the sky on all these places. And they are coordinating with the dozen-odd ships which are there in the Arabian Sea. A close coordination is also done with the Indian Air Force, if required, for drop into the sea, which was done just a fortnight ago when an Indian Air Force aircraft topped the Marcos next to the ship. If you look at it in a very realistic manner, this is a good message not only to China, but to all other Indian Ocean states or nations, that we as a nation are not only competent to keep our shipping line safe, but we are also competent to help them if the need arises, whichever place it may be. Like one of the squadrons, air squadrons of the Navy has a motto: any ship, any deck, any place. Today, that is what the Navy is doing. Any sea, any place, any time. If you look at in the broader perspective, why India has not joined the US coalition, which is patrolling the seas? The US coalition has got its own agenda. It is not necessarily keeping the shipping lanes free. Its agenda against is Houthis, which is not India's agenda. What is worrisome for the Indian Navy or for India as such, or any nation, which is transiting its trade and shipment through the Red Sea, should the Houthis decide to join hands with the Somalian pirates, or should the Somalian pirates decide to join hands with the Houthis, we are going to have a real serious problem on our hand. Recently, where the ship has been saved, the fishing ship, that is Kolkata, which is at the mouth of the Gulf of Aden, and it is equidistant from Somalia and Yemen. One really cannot be certain whether the Somalian pirates were getting help from any other nation. At this point of time, we have our own satellites, we have our long-range maritime aircraft operating. We are in touch with the Indian Air Force and other intelligence agencies, and it's working out fine. But I am sure the Indian Navy and the Naval Headquarters is already thinking ahead and looking at a threat where the Houthis and the Somalian pirates may come together. Like they say, my enemy, your enemy, we are friends. So if the Houthis feel that India is their enemy and Somalian pirates also feel that the Indian Navy is a deterrent, I wouldn't be surprised if these two units or these two entities decide to join hands.
All right. General Katoch, what does this also mean for the messaging that India has been able to construct as a result of this proactive initiative in terms of the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and to some extent the world at large?
I think as far as the Indian Ocean is concerned, the India as a nation and the Indian Navy has been proactive for quite some time. It is not something new. It has taken place earlier also, but now the emphasis is far greater than what it used to be. As far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned, leaving aside the Indian Ocean portion of it, and I think our role will be very limited in that area. By and large, that will be looked after much more by the Australian Navy and by the US Navy, and by of course the Japanese Navy there. But when we look into the Indian portion of the Indo-Pacific, that is going to be left to a very large extent entirely on the Indian Navy and the Indian Air Force also. So I think this is the situation which is likely to continue for at least the immediate future. As far as India not joining the Americans is concerned, I think as very correctly stated, the Americans were basically focused on the Red Sea and on actions to deter Yemen, the Houthis in Yemen. Now, India had no interest in getting involved in that sort of a conflict. Our aims were entirely different, so we remained out of that, and we kept ourselves on the western coast, on the western coast of as far as the Western Sea is concerned. So, and that situation again is likely to remain. But the point is, as has been brought out by all the panelists also, the amount of goodwill which has been generated amongst all the coastal countries, the Indian Ocean nations there, I think that has been tremendous. There is an increasing realization by all these countries that the net security provider in this region is India. And there are no sort of conditions attached. If the Chinese come in, there are conditions attached. If others come in, there are conditions attached. But when India comes in, I think it is much more benign and things which people would like to sort of accept. So to that extent, our role has been great. It will continue to expand as our Navy expands. And I think it will give a great deal of confidence to all the littoral countries in this region that India is a trusted partner, and working with India will yield much better dividends than otherwise. Vineet.
Right, absolutely. General Dwivedi, the messaging that India has been able to send here, and of course, we also keep talking about India's defense exports and how that likely is to become a big part of our economy, of our world stature. How is that also being facilitated, through these efforts?
If you look at India's security concerns in times to come, I think India will be faced with two fronts. One will be the continental front, that is the land front, and second will be the seaboard, that is the way we look at Indian Ocean at large. So India will have a great role to play as the time moves by, and our outreach will be right from the Strait of Malacca till the I think, east coast of Africa. That's the kind of seaboard that we'll be looking at. And in this, one association that is very important is the Indian Ocean Rim Association, which has 23 countries. And India needs to get this whole association come together because they have a lot of common interest. And that's where India can play firmly a very pivotal role. And when you asked about the defense equipment exports, already India is making inroads. I think we have opened out quite a bit with Africa. We are also opening out with other smaller nations, especially when you look at the ASEAN, the Philippines, the Malaysians also are on board. And this actually is going to expand. And as I mentioned, that seaboard will, in time to come, will override the land frontiers. And this is where the future of the complete, what we talk, Asian century is going to be played out. And that's exactly in the Indo-Pacific, where India will be precisely looking at larger canvas of Indian Ocean. And my last point is that as the time goes by, you will see that India Ocean will be very highly contested, because whether you look at China, you look at India, even the Western nations like France, Germany, all have stakes in the Indo-Pacific and in Indian Ocean. I think we have role to play, and a major role will also come not only in the commercial trade, but also in the defense arena, where India will be emerging as a major supplier of weapon equipment and also a guarantor of peace and security in this region.
That's a great point that you have made. And Commander Bakshi, the guarantor of security along with, taking care of your security supplies, is that the aspiration? Is that the dream that would be ideal for India, especially when it comes to, all the reliance perhaps the global South has shown towards India?
Absolutely right, Vineet. Global South is looking up to India as a leader. If we can remember, late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had mentioned before he had passed away, and he had mentioned to American President that it is high time India take the leadership of the emerging Asia-Pacific strategic area. And that is why this message has gone. A number of meetings have taken place. Some NGOs have come up, hinting towards Asia-Pacific Union of Asian Pacific countries for co-prosperity and joint development in all fields, including communication, including shipping, civil aviation. Fight against terrorism is very high on the agenda, and fight against climate. So this fight against terrorism is one of the major things which will come up, and every country will have to, contribute towards it. And of course, for protection of the common interest and the commercial interest of all countries joined together, you will have to have a common security. Common security, yes, it'll be the advanced further development of Quad. It'll be Quad plus and plus. That is what is going to come up. And number of countries are going to take place. And this is where, as you already seen, BrahMos has found market out there in the southeast. So is LCA finding, and other weapon systems are also finding. I'm not saying that we should look after our own marketing, but when India will become so advanced, we will be producing and probably become a supplier of major interest of the world. We will join them and become a supplier in the Southeast and Far East Asia. That is what is coming up. So India's role is determined, and so is going to be Japan, Australia. All these countries will have to play a very critical role in this game. And that is where, but let us not forget, all this has one actor behind it, and that is China. So China is getting a message, all other countries are getting a message, and this the point which has been brought out by Professor Karve, Captain Karve, has a very valid standing, and that is which country is supporting the armament and supply of these Houthis and other rebels. After all, they're getting weapon supply and free weapon supplies at a very good rate. This has to be looked into jointly by the countries, and it has to be, taken out like a poison. It has to be taken out from the roots. This aspect has to be also seen. So when we had attended a joint conference of Coast Guards of the various regions, this aspect had come up, how joint training can take place. how the supply of the other side, especially the pirates and the sea pirates, how it can be stopped. So this aspect also will come up in a very, very active manner. Vinny.
All right. Captain Karve, concluding thoughts from you, sir. We have completely run out of time. We'll end with your final thoughts.
The Indian Navy is passing through a very interesting phase where it has started flexing its muscles. Never before in the history of Indian armed forces has a nation got on record saying that, look, I have a dozen submarines patrolling the Indian Ocean. I got 24 warships patrolling the Arabian Sea. I got a dozen ships patrolling the Malacca Strait. This shows our intent. And the biggest advantage is when we talk of Atmanirbhar India, any nation which sees a ship built in India, a helicopter operating from that ship, which is saving lives, built in India, the ships is carrying weaponry, which is again built and manufactured in India. I think that is the best advertisement for any nation to sell its item and also to secure its place in the world global standing as a nation which can be depended upon and which you can look up to in case of difficulty, like the general said, without any strings attached.
Absolutely, without any strings attached and without any fear of losing out on a partner that may want to exploit you for more reasons than one, and some of them could be financially as well. On that note, I'll take a short break. Would like to thank all my guests. We'll be right back.
Predictor on 1X Bet, only on NewsX. Are you ready for the daily cricket show? Let's go.
What are modern day relationships like? What are weddings like today? What kind of statements do we set off by our marriages?
There is so much of pomp and show in marriages these days. There is pressure.
I absolutely predict that, people are going to have minimum 4 long-term relationships. It's good, and let's just normalize it.
I feel marriage will survive because there's no better alternative.
What we women want at these times on NewsX.
Hello and welcome. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on this special interview on NewsX. We are in conversation today with well-known actor Rajat Kapoor. Rajat, welcome back to NewsX. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for this. How are you doing?
All well, thank you. Great to see you virtually today, of course.
Hello.
We're of course going to be talking about Lutere, which is doing so well. You personally are also getting great reviews for it. It's the new series, which of course is streaming on Disney Plus Hotstar. So firstly, congratulations to you. How does it feel? Reading the praise, hearing what people have to say. What has been the response so far?
Good, I think. I am not really very much on social media, so I don't get all the updates. But from what I hear from people, I think it's doing well. The problem is that there is so much being made right now these days. I keep wondering, how do people watch everything? How does one watch? How does one keep up with all that is being thrown at them? And so what happens if there are 10 things releasing every week or 30 things every month? Out of that, you watch maybe 2 or 3, and others are like that. Maybe some people watch it or not so many, and they lose their life quite quickly. But I'm happy to report that Lutere is being watched. I know this because my friends are writing into me and saying, "Oh, we just saw it." So that's great. I feel good, but I feel wonderful for Jay and the whole team of Lutere because they have worked so hard at it and they put their 2.5, 3 years of their lives just on this project. And, for that to come out after 3 years of hard work and to get a good response is phenomenal. I'm so happy.
Yeah. You personally, of course, getting a lot of praise for your portrayal as well, but I think that's something you're used to.
No. I'm not used to it at all. So it's very good to get some praise for your work, to be at least noticed for your work. Because like I said, again, what happens sometimes, you think you've done a good job and it was a good role, but nobody ended up watching it, That happens a lot. Or sometimes things get watched a lot, but you are there only for a tiny bit. So you're not noticed in that sense. So it's nice that this one I'm happy because I have a good role in it. After a long time, I have a good meaty part, and then so that the praise feels nice, really nice.
What appealed to you? Let's take you a bit back into memory lane now. What appealed to you about the character when they first came to you with it? What was it about this?
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.